Hello, lovely ladies. I hope that you're having a wonderful time at the Bachelorette. I hope that it's sunny and that you're able to spend time up north. And Jordan, I hope that you're enjoying everything that the girls planned for you. So if you don't know me, my name's Kate. I'm the owner of Gather. And today we're going to be making floral crowns together. So you should have a pack. There should be a spool of wire. And so each of you are going to measure your heads so that it ends up being almost to the back. You should have about 4 inches left. And then add probably 4 more unwinds to that. So we're gonna try to flatten out our wires as much as possible. They're obviously not gonna go fully flat. And then we're gonna tie a little knot. I'm just gonna come forward. At the end here, just slightly larger than your finger, and just twist it tight. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. As long as you have a little loop, we're gonna end up putting some ribbon through it at the end. So we'll put that aside right now. You should all have in front of you a roll of floral tape. If it isn't started yet, just take a minute to do so. You should have a pair of clippers. And then you should all have received a bundle of flowers. So if you just want to take them out and divide them by type, if you have the space, that would be wonderful. I have all of mine laid out here as well. So if you've ever designed with me before, the difference between this floral crown and an arrangement is that we're not going to be using one thing at a time. We're going to be working with things on and off. And a lot of this is very much designer's choice. So I'm here to guide you, but don't think that it has to look exactly like this. So we're going to pick up our wires. And I'm gonna start with a piece of ruscus. With all of these greens and flowers, you're gonna see that you have 1 or 2 stems, but we're really gonna use each stem to the fullest. So for this, I'm just gonna cut a tiny piece off the end there. Don't make it too long because this is just going to cover your little loop that you made. So we're gonna place it on top there so that you don't see the loop by the time it's done. And then you're gonna take your floral tape and you're going to tape it as tightly as possible to the wire. The most important thing through this whole process is, 1, we don't ever break our tape. So it's one continuous piece and we just continue to build on top of it. 2, make sure that you're only building on one side of the wire. So it's really easy to start to flip back and forth. So just make sure that you're always holding your wire in a way that you know what is the front and what is the back. And then we're just gonna layer on top. We are gonna make some pretty wild flower crowns today and I'm super excited. I think that the main thing to remember is try to keep your width consistent. So it's really easy to pack things up heavy and then do one single flower and then keep things thin. But if you really want that dramatic look, we have to keep the same texture throughout. So I'm gonna go in now with a piece of salal. Again, we're keeping our stems super short, just long enough to be able to wrap them with tape. We don't wanna end up with a bunch of stems at the end. So I'm just layering this on top of my ruscus to create some texture. And I'm just gonna pinch them together and wrap my tape around again. And you will find that sometimes a flower will stick with 1 wrap of tape, sometimes it takes 2. Just as you're doing it, make sure that you're pinching your tape in to ensure that it is actually sticking. So this is gonna be the start. Just showing you up close there. And so basically we have 3 types of greens that we're gonna use. And I normally like to do a couple pieces of green and then a big bloom, and then a couple pieces of green and then a big bloom. Once you get to the center, that's obviously going to be around the focal point of your head. So that's where you might want to keep your accent flowers for. So your dahlia. The rest will kind of split up. So we do have 3 roses, a dahlia, 3 zinnias, again, all focal flowers. We have some amaranthus. I'm loving it right now. This is all locally sourced, so it's wonderful. So this guy, again, like the greens, we're gonna use it in multiple pieces. We have cornflower, and then we have some fillers. And really with these, I'm gonna probably put more of them at the bottom end of my crown so that they end up being on both sides, and then keep the full floral for the front portion that people will see. So next, I'm gonna go in with a piece of baby's breath. And if you find that you want it to be heavier, you can always cut 2 little stems and put them together. Again, keep your stems short. You're just gonna layer it in there. Something else to remember when making a floral crown is make sure that you're constantly moving down your wire. It's really easy to just layer, but again, it's gonna become super heavy on that end, and you just wanna make sure that you have the same amount of product throughout. So now I'm gonna go in with another little piece of ruscus. This is where we're gonna start using all of these offshoots. Just cut them. You can do 2 at a time if that works best for you. I'm gonna clear the leaves off the bottom so that it's easier to tape. And now that I have my 2 together, ready to be attached, I'm gonna cut a piece of the amaranthus, clear off the leaves, and just place it on top there because I want to start bringing in some color. So I'm gonna layer it on top, however it makes sense to you and your crown. Again, make sure that you're keeping your wire straight as you're taping. Make sure that you're pinching your tape as you go to keep everything really smooth and streamlined. So just to give you an example here, I'm just gonna rearrange that a bit. So this will be the back side of my head. And you can kind of see how quickly it's filling up. So we just wanna make sure that you're getting in all the flowers that you really want. So again, I'm gonna lay my crown flat to see what it needs. Hang on, my tape isn't sticking very well, so I'm just gonna do another little wrap. Perfect. Okay, so again, laying my wire out. I'm now gonna go in with some tiki. You don't have to use the full piece of this again, just use small pieces of it that we're gonna group together. So I'm probably gonna go in with 3. I'm gonna clear the bottoms of them so that we have room to tape. And this green is really not to fill, but just to create that whimsical wild look. If you're feeling a little bit frustrated with the taping, it's perfectly normal, I promise. I've been doing this for years and somehow there are days that it's still extremely frustrating. Just make sure that as you go, you're again just recentering your pieces to make sure that you're keeping them consistent in terms of width. Now that we're getting closer to the front, I'm gonna go in with a rose, a big focal flower. I didn't take the grower's petals off of these for you. I'm just gonna come up to show you, because it's kind of a designer's choice. Sometimes it helps the rose look a little bit more wild, and sometimes you decide that you don't like them. So if you wanna take them off, just put your finger really close to the rose's head, and then your thumb underneath, and just pull them. Make sure that you're not leaving any of the petal on there. Because we want these to look amazing for photos tonight, I'm assuming, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna blow my roses open. And again, choose to do this, you don't have to do this, but if you softly put your lips in the center of the rose and blow out, it's really gonna open it up for you, and it's gonna create that wow factor. So you can see it's tight right now. And now it looks more open and garden rose vibe. So again, if you do this to roses at home, this obviously is going to make their life a little bit shorter because we're essentially forcing them to open in an unnatural way. But if you want them to look bold and beautiful for photos, then let's do it. So now that we have one big focal flower taped in there, I'm gonna go back in with some Salal. So again, just little pieces, maybe 2-3 leaves at most. I'm gonna tuck these leaves kind of behind my rose. I'm gonna cut a little piece of ruscus, take off the leaves, again, the bottom, so we have room to tape, and just put it on top there, because now we're trying to create some texture. And again, if this isn't vibing for you, you can use any of the greens or the florals. I think that honestly it's best if they all turn out a little bit differently. But with that being said, if you're all following this exactly to plan, it's always amazing to me how people can follow the exact same instruction and come out with things that look totally different and unique, which is pretty magical in terms of creativity. So now I'm gonna go back in with some filler flower. So you can either use this to add that hint of purple, or you can go in with baby's breath if you want to make yours highly focused on that. Again, just taping as we go. And just make sure that you position your flowers as you're taping in the way that you want them to stand, because it's harder obviously to move them around once they're taped in place. So at this point, if you want to go up to a mirror, unless you're feeling super confident, and just kind of put it on the side of your head to kind of see exactly what you're building and size-wise, it'll give you a good idea of where you want to go with it as we're starting to build the front. So I'm going to go back in with some tiki here to create that whimsical kind of earthy look. And I'm going to go in with a zinnia on top of my tiki, because I want to get that green color in here now so that it's easier to spread throughout. So again, at this point, just make sure that you're constantly building downwards and that you are covering space on your wire. And then I'm going to go back in with some ruscus for texture, so 2 little pieces and a hint of baby's breath on top just to keep it consistent. We really just want to make sure that as we go, that we are keeping the same colors and textures throughout all pieces of our crown. So I'm going to build it like this. I'm going to hold the stems. Actually, the stem needs to come off for taping. And then I'm just going to place it in there. So now that we're getting pretty close to the center, I'm gonna start to go more heavy on the florals. I'm not going to use so much salal and big leaves anymore. We'll use them again when we get to the other side. We're going to go more focused on ruscus and tiki, just to keep it a little bit less heavy around your face. We obviously don't want massive leaves covering your eyes. I mean, again, if you do, go for it, sister. So I'm going to go in now with, I'm going to cut 2 pieces this time to just kind of really focus on the color. And I'm going to do a cornflower with it. So again, we're basically just making tiny little bundles in our hands that we're going to tape all together, just to kind of help with some time. So again, my little bunch looks like that. We have amaranthus, a cornflower, and a piece of ruscus. I'm going to throw that in there. Again, as you're taping, make sure that you're keeping your tape pretty linear. I guess the best way to describe it is that you're constantly moving downwards with your tape, not so much around and around. And then pinching every one because the tape does stick to itself. I'm gonna throw in some of this because I really want that wild effect up near the hairline. So again, position it as you want it to ideally look like at the end. So to give you an idea, this is what mine is looking like right now. So you can see pretty full floral, some more wild on the side. I'm gonna go in now with my dahlia. This is gonna be my main focal flower of my crown. And I don't want it to be dead center necessarily, kind of off to the side, because it is so large. We don't want it to look like a headlight at the front. And I'm gonna do 2 little pieces of ruscus with it, just to keep that green texture consistent. Again, cut and maneuver your greens as you see fit. If you don't want them so wild, cut them down a bit. If you want them more wild, then obviously leave them as is. And just remember to consistently be straightening out your wire. Wire maintains at the back the whole time. Yay, these are getting so cute. Okay, I'm gonna go in with a little bit more amaranthus again. And mostly because I love the color. If something else is really connecting with you or you're connecting to something else, feel free to go in with that. I'm gonna do an amaranthus and a zinnia because I do really want there to be kind of like a focal area on my crown. I'm gonna go in with a little bit more filler because we do want to keep that wild look now that we've kind of gone heavy with the florals. So again, just look around at the pieces. To me, I think that they speak to me. I hope they speak to you as well. And you can kind of just say like, oh, that's a little bit, you know, too thick for what I want right now, or too thin. So this, I'm putting 2 pieces on the bottom and 1 piece on the top around my zinnia, because I really do want it going in both directions rather than just up or down. Okay, so this is gonna be the kind of, sorry about the tape, the like main event of my crown. So you can see it's super heavy, full of zinnia, and a big dahlia there. And that's kind of what I want the focus to be. So now I'm gonna start working out with some smaller flowers, and then going from there. So I'm gonna go back in with some ruscus. Because there hasn't been a lot of greens going on lately. So again, one piece on the top, one piece on the bottom, to just get that green feel in there. And I'm gonna take that as is because I don't really want anything else kind of, I guess, interrupting the greens. Remember to straighten out your wires as we're going. Okay, and then I'm now gonna go in with some tiki again, probably a little bit heavier. I just want there to be kind of a green focus so that when we start the florals again, there's just kind of that break, if that makes sense. And you know what, with this, I'm gonna add a tiny piece of baby's breath again, just to keep the colors consistent and textures consistent throughout. And as you kind of bend it out, if you want to take a look, that's what it's essentially going to look like, so you can get a good idea of where you're going with it. So on my head right now, which it is important to measure as you go, even if I'm building for a client, I consistently measure it because you want to know where you're at in terms of someone's head. So right now, if I put this kind of just off center of the back of my head, I have big green fun full foliage. I have some really big accent points right here. So I'm gonna keep it thin for another while until I feel that I'm about to hit the point of my other ear. So at this point, probably another 3 inches or so. And then we'll start adding the salal back in and making it super full again. So I'm gonna add in a rose. Again, I'm picking off my petals that I don't want, and I'm blowing it open. If you kind of pinch your stems together before you tape, it'll make it a lot easier for you. And pinch your tape as you go to keep it super tight and to allow it to stick together. Okay, I'm gonna add in, again, some more ruscus and some filler. Again, add as much as or as little as your heart desires. I hope that you guys are starting to get excited for the final product here. So I'm just kind of realigning to make sure that the things that I want at the forefront are at the forefront, and so on. I'm going to add a couple more little pieces of the amaranthus for texture and color. And I'm gonna do that with a little piece of tiki behind it because we are going full texture at this point. And after this next ad, we should be back kind of to building with the salal again, making it really full. So I'm gonna add in, actually no, let's go in with the corn flour. Again, if for some reason you think that something else looks better at this point, all the flours are interchangeable. I'm just really trying to create texture and keep kind of the florals consistent throughout so that we have a bit of every color and texture on every side of the wreath. Try to keep your tape flat as well as you go. It easily gets rolled as mine just did, but it does make the taping a little bit harder for you. So at this point, I'm gonna go in with some baby's breath. And that's mostly because if you look at mine right now, the last piece that I added is kind of non-existent. It kind of got hidden underneath there. So it'll still be a really good touch, but we do want to just make sure that the colors are consistent throughout. So remember not to build all the way to the end of your wire because we do have to create one more of those little loops at the back. So make sure that you're being mindful just to leave space to do that. Okay, I'm gonna go back in with some salal right now because I'm gonna start to build it out wider. And again, some filler for texture. Make sure again that you're not building on top of other things, but you're constantly moving down as you're going. I'm gonna go in with some ruscus. We're going a little bit more green heavy again. Make sure that you leave one piece. So actually I'll do that right now. I'm gonna set this one piece aside because it's gonna be our very end piece just to hide that last little loop. So just to make sure that you have the product left over at the end. I'm going to clear the stems so that I can fit them in there. Then I'm gonna go in with my last rose. Actually, I'm gonna go in with my zinnia. Again, at this point, it's really designer's choice, just kind of feeling out what your crown needs. But because we're getting so close to the end, I just wanna make sure that I'm using all of my larger headed florals at this point. So again, just taping. If your tape does get too wound up throughout the building process and it's getting frustrated, I know I said don't cut it, but you can cut it and just restart. It's just easier to keep it consistent. If you're ripping your tape after every single ad, one, it'll take you forever, but two, it doesn't really give the crown kind of the consistency that it needs to stay together. So you'll see that, you know, that's when you get like those big gaps, and it's just because it's not all consistent. So I'm gonna add some more salal because again, I want it to match my other side and have that kind of big, full, leafy green look. I'm gonna add a little bit of tiki because I want, sorry, I have a piece cut, because I want that whimsicalness as well to stay consistent. And because the way that mine is shaping up right now, I'm gonna add a little bit more of the amaranthus with this because it was just looking a little bit too green. So I want there to be that hint of color. So again, now I have amaranthus, tiki, and salal on the bottom. Make sure you are angling your leaves the way that you want them to sit prior to taping. Okay, I'm gonna add one more little hint of baby's breath just to get it on this side of the head. So at this point, just really focus on using whatever it is that you have left that is really inspiring to you. Mine right now feels kind of salal heavy, right? So I'm gonna go in with some tiki. If you have ruscus left, you can go in with that at this point. We're really just winding it down to the very end. So I'm gonna throw my last rose in with this tiki. Again, taking off the petals. And blowing it open. Don't have to do that by any means. Just want it to look a little bit more impactful right off the bat. So taping it there. So mine is pretty much done at this point. If you still have a lot of wire and you want to keep going, totally up to you. I'm just gonna add a little bit of filler with that piece of ruscus that I had set aside earlier to just kind of finish it off. So I have 3 little pieces. I'm just gonna back it onto some ruscus. I'm going to tape it. If you have more wire left over than you think you need to make the loop, which I know I do, then just feel free to cut it at this point. So to end the tape, I also just pulled it and it came apart. I'm just gonna cut a tiny bit of the wire and I'm gonna make another loop that's about the size of my finger, like what we started with. And I'm gonna make sure that it's under my stems because again, the wire should always be on the bottom. And your stems might not look fully finished right now. So we can, just make sure that you're doing this wire super tight as you're going because it's gonna hold the ribbon. Now that I have that in there, I'm gonna go and I'm just gonna clip my stems so that they just all look short and even. Make sure you don't cut your tape. Just gonna clean up here so I can show you. Okay, so we are basically now just going to loop the ribbon on the back side and then through the other one. So basically the florals are going to go on the front of your head and the ribbon is going to go around the back. This is really hard to put on yourself. Okay, maybe help each other out a bit. And then you can pull the ribbon tight at the back to tie either a knot or a bow, depending on what you're most comfortable with. And this kind of just helps make sure that doesn't matter your head size, that the crown is going to look okay. And then you can just kind of position it in a mirror, obviously, to kind of feel how you want it to feel. So we're done now. I hope that you had a great time creating with me and that you love your floral crowns. I hope I get to see photos of them because I can't wait to see what you've created. And I hope you guys have a great weekend and enjoy all the other activities. Happy Bachelorette again, Jordan.